Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this special edition seminar initiated by the Austrian Federal Ministry for Agriculture and Forestry, Climate and Environmental Protection Regions and Water Management. It's quite a long ministry with lots of competences. A member of the EPRC-led European Regional Policy Research Consortium. My name is Carlos Mendes, and I'm a director here at the European Policies Research Centre at the University of Strathclyde. Today we welcome Markus Gruber from Convelop and Edurne Magro from Orkestra, the Basque Institute for Competitiveness, both be presenting on the topic of making transformative innovation work in regional policy. There'll be around 45 minutes of presentations of the two sequentially, followed by a discussion. Some ground rules. If you'd like to make an intervention, please do use the raise hand function or post a question in the chat, which we'll address in the Q&A session at the end. The webinar is being recorded, which means that you and your colleagues can have the opportunity to follow up at a later stage and posted on YouTube, also shared by email. So please feel free to share your thoughts also on social media. Okay, let me present our speakers for today. Markus Gruber studied business administration at the University of Graz from 1992 to 2004. He's worked at the Uranium Research, first as a researcher, then senior researcher, and as of 2000 he's been a manager of the Graz site of the Institute for Technology and Regional Policy. He's been involved in many studies on regional policy and projects, also on regional innovation policy and programme evaluation. And since 2005 he's been the managing partner at Convelop with responsibility for policy design and evaluation. Edurne Magro is a senior researcher at Orkestra, the Basque Institute of Competitiveness. She has a PhD in business competitiveness and economic development from the University of Deusto, after having spent time at Manchester Institute of Innovation Research at the University of Manchester. She holds a degree in business administration and management and has a master's in innovation and technology management from the University of Deusto. Edurne has a long professional career as a researcher, starting at the Technalia Technology Corporation, and she's coordinated and participated in many research projects on competitiveness and innovation at European level. Okay, I'm just going to briefly give the floor to Julian Kolm from the Federal Ministry to provide some context for the session today. Julian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carlos. So first of all, I'd like EPRC and EoRPA for providing this platform today, and of course, the two speakers. So just to give a little bit of background, presentation by Markus Gruber presents outcomes of a multi-year project that was developed in the framework of the Austrian Conference on Spatial Planning, the so-called EuROC, which is a kind of peculiar institution that brings together the Austrian states and the federal level on an equal footing across sectoral policies. And this specific project was driven by several Austrian states and federal ministries as well as agencies. And for us, this was really not primarily an academic exercise, but an attempt to drive policy innovations. And among other things, we hope to apply the results of these projects in the context of programming for the next multi-annual financial framework of the EU, but we are not restricted to that in any way. And for today, we're of course very much looking forward to the responses and comments from an international audience, which hopefully helps us to develop these things even further. And thus, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Markus.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. Thank you, Carlos, for introduction. Well, it's good to be back in Glasgow, at least in the virtual room. It was a long time ago that I had a stay at EPRC. Yeah, Julian explained. My presentation is based on a project within the framework of the so-called EuROC. And my colleagues, Konstantin Melidis and of Convelop and Michael Fischer of EoRPA, a regional governance expert, they are also attending today. The focus of the project, I think I share, sorry. Yeah. Okay, the focus of the project was on the relationship, let's say, between transformative innovation policy and regional policy. In other words, we examined what the shift in the policy towards transformative innovation policy means for the regional policy in Austria. This is also in the context of the European Commission and JRC initiatives of Partnership of Innovation, or respectively Innovation for Place-Based Transformation.
Sorry, Markus, could you put it on presenters mode? Unless that doesn't work, in which that's better. Thank you.
It's better? Yeah. Okay, fine. The project was a literature survey and case study based, and as Julian already mentioned, knowledge transfer, reflection amongst policymakers to come up with some conclusions here. In this context, I think it's important to note that Austria is a federal state with a population of around 9 million, 9 Bundesländer, Bundesländer states, and numerous regions at the sub-regional level. The regions generally do not have their own legal identity, besides, of course, the municipalities and cities. Coming to the transformative innovation policy, the rationale is the systemic approach of innovation systems, while we so-called Frame 2, was successful in improving competitiveness, but not contributed or contributed too little to solving societal challenges, such as climate change, resource consumption, and so on, and sometimes even exacerbated them. The core principles address transformational failures, lack of directionality, policy coordination, reflexivity, as well as the need for experimentation, given that we are dealing with the so-called wicked problems. Wicked problems are problems in the social situation that cannot be solved in a laboratory and simply be replicated, but have to be tested, developed and tested rather in the real world. The problems, they manifest differently in each context. And the main challenge lies in the overcoming the lock-ins, the past dependencies of unsustainable systems, such as energy production consumption based on fossil oil resources. That is why far-reaching or disruptive innovations are necessary in order to open up a new development path. At the same time, however, it must also be ensured that old practices do not continue to exist in parallel, but are gradually phased out. This has led us to the so-called X-curve, which describes elements or processes of transformation. This involves on the left side the innovation and its scaling through dissemination, connecting different innovations and technologies, leading to niche solutions that gradually diffuse and establish themselves as a new practice. Supported is all this by feedback loops with design of new design of standards, regulations, etc. The second line of action means that unsustainable practices must be gradually weakened and phased out through communication, price increases, bans, or so on. This is to avoid that parallel existence of technologies or solutions, or to avoid that the older, established but unsustainable technology displaces the new one. This requires also mitigation of the impact of change, enabling a just transition. This is also the idea behind just transition plans and funds also implemented here in Austria. So far, so good. However, innovation is not just innovation. Transformative innovation must go beyond efficiency gains with existing businesses and solutions. It must enable system innovations and open up new development paths. And time and again, we see that existing configurations more tend towards efficiency gains, optimizing current technology or business models. This is why startups, young companies, or new actors often provide an impetus on the innovation. These innovations cannot be developed and replicated in laboratory situations. We are talking about experiments. We are talking about innovations that are located at the interface between people and technology and are intended to change systems. This means they must be developed and tested in real environments. And this is why living labs, real-world laboratories, etc. exist. Users have to be involved not only in the phase of experimentation, but also designing policy priorities. And this is also one reason why regions and cities plays an important role in transformation. They benefit from geographical proximity, social networks, enabling them to develop system innovations on a small scale. In other words, cities and regions can become test beds or innovation laboratories themselves. For a long time, the concept of transformative innovation policy has been criticized for lacking spatial relevance and the specific characteristic of different spaces. This has led to a new governance approach, adopting also a multi-scalar perspective. One example of this is the work of JRC with Dimitri Pantikakis, who delivered the keynote speech at the launch of our project. Transformation is polycentric, occurring in various forms and at different levels. This requires different types of public sector stimuli. As previously mentioned, regions have advantages for cross-sector innovation and cooperation due to their geographical proximity, and they can therefore develop solutions that may later be scaled up. The upper levels, particularly the federal level, state level as well, are better placed to mobilize, provide resources, support learning environments, interregional learning, facilitate the scaling up. They can provide the necessary infrastructure to implement new solutions, for example, in the energy sector, and adapt regulations. So we now have a new transformative innovation policy paradigm, the X curve. This means that innovation alone is not enough. We need a certain type of innovation, disruptive system innovation, or potential for system innovations. We should scale this up in the following, while in parallel, weakening and destabilizing old, unsustainable technologies and practices. And we know that transformation is polycentric, occurring at different levels. Regions have advantages for systemic solutions. It's good, but it's not still not good enough. we have to ask, transformation to what? Which societal challenge are we trying to solve? This is where we introduce the missions, objectives for transformation. We won't go in detail now. We'll come back later to this. So, sorry if I maybe bored you, but it's always I always have to talk myself through the things to help me to understand what's going on and why we should do something or shouldn't do something. Yeah. So Austria has followed, to come to Austria, finally, Austria has followed an international trend by pursuing transformative innovation policy for around, let's say, a decade. This policy gained momentum latest around 2020, thanks to international developments, EU's Green Deal and new government coalition and so on. Yeah. Let's have a look on two examples which are coming from the federal side and federal missions. The first one, the supporting the energy transition in Austria. The mission is sustainable reduction in energy and resource consumption and comprehensive use of renewable energy. So we have not only technology, we have also social innovation and reducing energy consumption. The National Energy and Climate Plan indicates 57% renewable energies by 2030 and 100% of electricity consumption covered by domestic renewable sources by 2030. On this slide, we now see the elements, let's say the elements which we derived from the X curve. So we have the mission, we have an enabling space, we call it enabling or innovation space for experimentation, which is, let's say, supported by calls and programs from the federal side, Austrian Research Promotion Agency or the Climate Energy Fund. Then providing a learning environment for exchange and learnings of the projects, a scaling element, scaling and diffusion. For instance, the climate and energy model regions. And we have also the other elements of institutionalizing new solutions and destabilizing, phasing out of unsustainable practice, let's say by the ETS trading system and the prohibition of new fossil fuel heating systems, the climate neutrality in general. So we see that the main elements of the X curve and of the transformative innovation policies are implemented here on a more federal national level. Yeah. So the question is there also a regional side? And of course, in this topic, regional dimension is very strong. The regional dimension in energy transition, regions and municipalities coordinate, for instance, spatial planning, development, regional energy plans, energy cooperatives of citizens and companies, sector coupling projects require spatial proximity, and awareness rising for renewables, energy efficiency, etc. Yeah? And in Austria is implemented 130 climate and energy model regions, a scaling program. It's more, let's say, a diffusion program. It's not scaling in a narrow sense, but brings projects and ideas into the regions. We had the chance to have a policy lab in one region in a rural area. It was quite astonishing. In Styria Mura, energy vision was created to be energy self-sufficient. We found a lot of projects and also a real-world laboratory, a real labor for 100% renewable energies, and a very successful region with the resulting in that the region generates 3 times more electricity from renewable sources than it consumes itself. With 70% of buildings are heated already in CO2 neutral manner, and the surplus of the electricity will now be used to invest more in expansion of e-mobility and e-mobility test, to become an e-mobility test bed in the region. Yeah. And a clear success factor was, let's say, a clear vision and the governance system, and capacity building in the region, a close network of intermediary organizations. The capacity building lasted, let's say, 2 decades and enabled the region to come up with these quite, for the size of the region, challenging projects. And quite interesting was that in the region, very early, a voluntary withdrawal of installers from the installation of all heating systems happened long before we had the legal regulation here in Austria. Yeah, so we have here energy transition with the following this paradigm, having research innovation and a regional dimension in the implementing phase. Yeah. The second one is Austria's mission on climate neutral cities. It's a program, long-lasting, let's say, program here in Austria. It's an, let's say, extension of the EU mission of climate neutral and smart cities, and is following, let's say, 2 paths, an impact path, which follows system innovation to support cities, pioneer cities in capacity and competence building and developing plans, roadmaps for climate neutrality, to develop and implement system innovations and pilot demonstration projects, and demonstrate climate neutral pilot neighborhoods.
Markus, sorry, I don't think your slides are moving on.
Sorry.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, and on the second side, there's a system transformation impact path. Yeah, and the main point here is also that the program shifted from a more technology-focused approach, let's say city technologies, to a real place-based approach, and the paradigm of transformative innovation policy, supporting cities with the capacities building, personnel, supporting with personnel in the cities to build up capacities for the climate neutrality and to reshape processes in the cities, to deliver enabling innovation in supporting, let's say, demonstration projects, energy, mobility, circular economy, and to support the scaling via transfer and activations of additional and new municipalities and cities to participate to this know-how. Here we have a map of the climate neutral pioneer cities here in Austria. So what we have is we have let's say a strong implementation of the paradigm of transformation innovation for transformative innovation policy. Sorry, here in Austria at the federal level, and we have a strong regional dimension. If we look again at the multi-level governance structure of transformation, so we have transformation as a polycentric approach occurring in diverse forms and in multiple levels. And this requires different types of public sector stimuli from federal, länder, and regional levels. We already mentioned the strong role and impetus of the federal level. We have the state level also to promote regional innovation system and technology platforms, shape the framework conditions such as spatial planning, and also acting as intermediaries, aligning regional initiatives with the national innovation and development priorities. Sometimes the Länder level has also a scaling function, building an interface between regions and interregional learning. And we have the regional level, regional cities and municipalities as a real new arena for the place-based innovation, with the advantage of cross-sectoral collaboration and experimentation, testing new solutions, real-world conditions, and potential scalings of these solutions. And this role of strength of regions should be strengthened, and there's a need for, let's say, strengthening their innovation capacities, in particular at the, let's say, regional, sub-regional level. Well, coming back to the missions and to the linkages to the regional policy. A broader view on the landscape of transformative innovation policies, that we have, let's say, a mission boost. We have 5 or 6 missions: energy transition, mobility, bioeconomies, sustainable food, circular economy, for the green transformation. And we have an implementation of the EU missions. The climate neutral city I already mentioned, but also other topics such as soil, the mission soil and ocean. And let's say 9 out of 10 missions, mission area address regions and are relevant for the regional level and at the regional level. On the other hand, we have on the regional side, the The regions are facing very specific challenges, such as demographic shifts, affordable housing, public services, economic restructuring. There are many.
Markus, I think your slides are stuck again.
Sorry. There are many bottom-up, let's say, non-targeted programs, meaning that a matching often happens rather by chance between regions and the mission-oriented approach. For instance, there is let's say structure with the bottom-up approach, a place-based approach, and participation, an Austrian-wide structure with the leader CLLD, and it's still not linked to missions. So there should be there is a need for a stronger connections. Important missions should be developed consistently, and bottom-up programs should be better aligned with the societal challenges. Well, this is of course not straightforward in the multi-level governance system, and in many areas it relies largely on a voluntary cooperation. But in the new programming generations, maybe there's a chance to link better both words and both sides. Yeah. Well, coming to policy level recommendations, what were the learnings with focus on regional policy? So to come to a more strategic approach for orchestration. So missions may have a potential to orchestrate and to coordinate between the levels here in Austria. It's important to have a joint definition of a few missions, e.g. in the National Regional Partnership Plan and in the next generation of EU programs, and establishing learning platforms within the multi-level governance system. And linking the bottom-up regional development schemes better to the societal challenges, so that missions can provide a guideline also for this regional development bottom-up programs, such as LEADER, for example. Making experimentation easier is a challenge, a long-lasting challenge. Of course, risk-taking, dealing with uncertainty, often conflict with administrative logics, in particular audit institutions. They're working on the reduction of risk adversity, to accept failures as a valuable learning experience. Change in culture and mindsets would be important, both national, but in particular also in EU policy side. And using also on regional level new instruments such as regulatory sandbox, innovation labs, and so on. Strengthen the capacity for scaling. Shift more towards, let's say, a strategic portfolio management or niche management, which means not only to support project by project, but to focus on certain themes and to link the project results with the scaling management, which is not yet established fully. It's very often outsourced via temporary funding projects. So it would be important that agencies can develop their own in-house scaling expertise. Well, it's both at a national and a regional level. Of course, it's depending on the budgets and the resources. And the second point is we very often feel that the competition law is restricting scaling initiatives as limiting. So maybe there could be also discussion at EU level. And finally, to improve capacities at the regional level is one of the main issues for regional policy. Many organizations, we have seen the climate energy model regions, we have the CLD regions, the regional management, and so on. At the sub-regional levels are small scale, transformative innovation, systems and cross-sectoral innovations, let's say a challenging job. So it's necessary to empower the regional innovation ecosystems for this sort of transformative innovation and the know-how and the skills, and aligning the management structures with the transformation priorities. So to come to a sort of network-linked transformation agency at the regional level. To get more, let's say, also development power in the sense of transformation. Well, finally, a part of the project explored whether the new generation of EU programs could support this type of policy approach, particularly in light of new smart specialization framework and the innovation for place-based transformation initiative. And in principle, there is a considerable potential for such an approach, given the multi-level partnership, the territorial focus, the flexibility in the types of measures and instruments applied, and the themes outlined in the draft regulations to implement such a policy approach. However, from Austrian perspective, certain key preconditions would have to be met, notably a shift in mindset and adapted control systems within the EU funding system, which is a, let's say, precondition to come into more flexible, also risky experimenting projects. Some conclusions. Transformative innovation policy has a clear regional dimension. It should be better interlinked with the regional policy, for example, through the joint definition of challenges and missions. So use the potential of all levels. Regions should be strengthened in their capacities for transformative innovation, particularly also at the local and sub-regional level. And scaling should be an integral part of all the policy schemes, also from the regional policy side. 2 points for discussion and reflection. So transformation, already mentioned, occurs in diverse forms and multiple levels, requiring different types of stimuli. So should the focus be on coordinating actors with the multi-level system, or rather on the building the capacities to stimulate innovation and variety, and to have a capacity to recognize, absorb, reflect, and scale up successful solutions? Focus on capacities of intermediaries as a key player in transformation, in particular at the regional, sub-regional level. And we realized in the discussion, at least at the regional level, phasing out of unsustainable practices and unlearning. Is it still a blind spot? So maybe we could also discuss what are the experiences in other regions or countries to this topic. Yeah, so this was a tour de force through the project results. Thank you for your attention. And I give back to Carlos or to Edurne.
Thank you, Markus. That was, a really interesting overview of I guess the history of innovation policy in Austria. There's been a clear shift, a transformative innovation policy paradigm has clearly been adopted in many principles, and also I think what came through strongly was a clear place-based approach to the new strategy and paradigm shift. A strong focus on addressing societal challenges, experimentation as well. You focused on the energy transition, but also other missions, important learnings as well in terms of strategies and mission approach, but also concentrating on core missions, bottom-up territorial approach strategically. And two other points I think that came through was the need for experimentation, in particular to scale up and at the same time bring in capacity, improve capacity at all levels for doing so. And then I think you came back at the end on the importance of exploiting European Union policy frameworks. Okay, I think we can now move on to Edurne Magro from the Orkestra Institute for Competitiveness, who will reflect on the Basque case that has a long history in innovation policy and also paradigm shifts over time, a success case in the Spanish context for sure, but also at European level. Who'll give us an overview of the Basque case, but also some reflections on the Austrian points that were raised. The floor's yours, Edurne.
Thanks, Carlos, and well, thanks for the invitation first, and thank you very much to Markus for giving such a complete overview of transformative innovation policy and the importance of having a place-based approach. So I also have some well, theoretical thoughts, and I'm not gonna I'm not going to explain all of them in detail because Markus has introduced some of them, but I want to highlight some important messages for having this place-based approach of transformative innovation policy and missions. First of all is that, regions have been implemented over decades the concept of regional innovation systems, as Markus already mentioned, but also that European policy, cohesion policy, boosted a decade ago. The concept of smart specialization strategies in regions. And I think this is important because it made a shift from horizontal policies towards more directional approaches. Okay, so we could think that these smart specialization strategies could be the basis for transformative innovation policies in regions because they were directional, okay, but also incorporated what was called entrepreneurial discovery process, which tended to be more open and participatory, following a multi-actor perspective. But recently, these approaches have been criticized because they have failed in facilitating forms of social innovation and incorporating the voice of society, which are so relevant for these transformative innovation policies, and have focused very much on science and technology. Okay, so taking this as a basis, and as Markus mentioned, that transformative innovation policy are different because they focus on transformational failures, such as directionality, which is really important and has been largely studied. Demand articulation, also Markus mentioned the importance of users. Policy coordination, not only in a multi-level perspective, but also in a multi-domains perspective. And, reflexivity, which means, the importance of learning, and as well as Markus' last point, also on unlearning as well. If we take the concept of missions, we also see that missions have different dimensions, which is the strategic orientation, which is very similar to directionality, policy coordination as well, but also they put lot of emphasis on policy implementation. And depending on the strategic orientation and how these missions are implemented, we can differentiate between accelerator missions, which are similar to the Apollo mission, okay, so very centralized mission, focus on science and technology, or transformative, which are more related to these wicked problems and with a strategic orientation closer to grand societal challenges. And in these approaches, the bottom-up perspective is very important, together with the scalability. And here I think it's important also to highlight the relevance of policy competencies and capabilities. So if we go to the subnational level, what we find in the literature, and I think this is very interesting, is that regions and local or cities have to interpret or translate global missions into their specific context. And this is a process which is multi-stage and is shaped by the actors involved in all these multiple policy levels. So we can say that it's not the same mission implemented in all levels, but complementary missions. So here regions can play a complementary or subsidiary role to the missions designed at supranational or national level, which I think is really interesting. And then I will going to focus more on the governance of these transformative innovation policies, and to understand a bit about these governance models, it's important to differentiate between, among three types of governance models that can exist in a territory. Okay, first of all, we have what we call society-based governance models, which rely on communities that are proactive and the society's ability to self-organize. It's not very common in our context, while others depend more on the state role, which are called administrative-based governance models. Or on a hybrid, it's more than a hybrid, it's a network-based governance, which is based on a network of regional actors. Okay, so it's important to understand these models because new governance models should really emerge for developing these new policy approaches. So now coming to the Basque case context, the Basque country is located here in the north of Spain, close to France. And it's a successful case of industrial transformation and innovation upgrading that has been documented by Harvard. Also, we have published some cases. What is really particular of the Basque case in terms of policy is that it has a very complex institutional policy and setting. It's a NUTS 2 region, okay, 2 million inhabitants, but has really, really strong regional competencies, especially in innovation policy. And at the sub-regional level, NUTS 3 level, we have 3 provinces. They have strong competencies in economic development, and also they collect taxes, which is really relevant for policy, because well, the Basque Country has a significant powers in, well, legislative, executive, and fiscal areas. Okay, so that gives to the governments really resources as well as for policy. And because the competencies are also distributed within the region, then, well, it's important, the multi-level governance. So I'm going to present 2 cases to illustrate, well, the ideas I already mentioned. 2 cases that are 2 interpretations or translations of an EU mission, and which are focused on electric mobility, okay, or new mobility. So the first case is the Basque Electric Mobility Mission. So at the NUTS 2 level, Basque government, which is embedded in the Science, Technology and Innovation Regional Strategy. And the second case is the New Mobility Mission in Guipúzcoa, which is one of the 3 provinces, so NUTS 3 level. And this mission is included in the framework of the sub-regional territorial strategy. So 2 different administrative levels, and well, they have, as I mentioned, well, the regional level has strong competencies on industrial policy, STI policy, among others, while the sub-regional level has strong competencies on economic development and fiscal policy. The policy rationale is different in both cases, although we could say that the mission is similar. Because at the regional case, well, this mission is part of the smart specialization, well, the STI plan, which also includes the smart specialization strategy. So we could say that the mission is part of an innovation policy, whereas in the sub-regional case, as it is part of the territorial strategy, which is based on a strong collaborative governance, it was considered more as a policy innovation, so as an experiment, so as a way of approach missions following a co-creation process. As I said, well, the governance, pre-existing governance arrangements are different, because in the sub-regional case, it's a network-based governance that has been built over the last decade. And well, it includes the participation and decision-making as well of actors from the quadruple helix, including the third sectors and users and society. Whereas in the Basque case, as it is a part of well, government plan, it's very based on administration. And well, this administrative model is also a policy, well, yeah, it's a model in which different policy departments from the government are included. So we can see a policy coordination, and also other representatives of other administrative levels as well, but it's mainly a government-led model. So what we see when we study these 2 cases is the output has been really different, because the process at the sub-regional level, as it has been co-created, has led to a mission which is more transformative in the sense that is oriented to society and people are well in the center of the mission. And in the Basque case, it is more an accelerator type of mission, which is focused on electronic vehicle technology and it is well, more technological based mission. And in terms of instruments, as also Markus mentioned, they were very relevant. At the regional case, there is only, well, there is one experimental instrument that supports the missions, but on the other hand, at the sub-regional level, they have boosted a portfolio of instruments that which also includes experimentation projects. Okay, so we can see here also more transformative approach. So what I wanted to highlight is that it's important to understand pre-existing governance arrangements because they condition the way transformative innovation policies are implemented. And well, it's important not only governance arrangement, but also the context and the influence of factors in the process of defining these missions. Because, well, and more administrative-based governance leads to a technology-led mission, which is also important. But a more participatory network-based governance leads to a more society-based and transformative direction. So we need to take this into account. So at the end, mission safe governance mechanisms and existing governance modes also condition the orientation of the mission. So I wanted to put this the emphasis on governance here. And also what we can see is that even within a region, having different missions and different orientations of missions is not, well, doesn't imply fragmentation because they can be complementary, and that shows also the complementary capacities between governments. And this is also a point that Markus mentioned, is that, well, a regional level or, well, in our case, because we have resources, but also in other cases, national levels can contribute more to mobilize infrastructure and technological resources, and sub-regional level may mobilize social networks and experiments with local solutions that later can be scaled up. So there is not one-size-fits-all approach of these transformative innovation policies, but it's important to see the different and complementary roles of the different administrative levels. And that's why this multi-level strategy is really important because, well, it really allows the full use of the different capacities across the levels, and also it's important to that these missions have this solid base of legitimacy at the local and social level. So that's what I wanted to share with you, and I think it's complementary to what Markus shared, and so looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you, Edurne. Again, an excellent presentation illustrating the kind of paradigm shift over time in innovation policy. I think you began with a criticism of the smart specialization, the absence of a strong social innovation, voice of society, citizen-led approach, and the overemphasis on high-tech industry, which led to conclusions in terms of the need for greater directionality, demand, articulation, and also a mission-led approach, although there are differences here in terms of accelerator v transformative approaches, the need for, again, scaling up, as Markus said, and experimentation and building capacity, but also a strong place-based focus to translate the global policy challenges and societal challenges You emphasize three different governance models: society, administrative, and network governance, and I think illustrated all of this through two case studies, one at the Basque level, a more administrative approach, and then at the provincial level, well, of course, one of the three provinces, Gipuzkoa, focusing on mobility, a stronger quadruple helix approach, citizen-led with co-creation, which has led to more transformative outcomes. And again, some similar conclusions in terms of the importance of pre-existing governance frameworks, the importance of bi-directionality, missions influence governance, but also vice versa. This challenge of fragmentation versus capacity as well, but that can be addressed through multi-level governance, which is the key really to make full use and exploitation of all capacities. So thank you both. We can now open the floor for questions and answers and discussion. Please do introduce yourself. Any questions? Markus, you've come back in to provide some reflections. Please do unmute yourself.
The micro. Yeah. Thank you, Carlos, and thank you, Edurne. I would like to pose a question to Edurne Basque country. In our discussions, we focused around intermediate organizations as key players, linking, let's say, the partners and managing the process, and that there are new skills necessary. For the transformational paradigm than simply for regional development and innovation projects. Do you have, let's say, here a picture experience about your discussion?
Okay. I think that's an important issue. It's well, I mentioned that the Basque Country has a very complex institutional setting in the sense that we have different types of intermediaries, and the ones that have been involved very actively in the previous smart specialization strategies, and I think they will be key actors in these new approaches, are clusters organizations. Why? Because I think, in these new approaches, it's important to have also representatives from the non-incumbents actors, and this type of intermediaries can really raise the voice of the voiceless at some sense. So maybe here could be clusters, but it also can be, I don't know, networks of different types of factors also can be built from the entrepreneurial discovery processes as well. So it depends on the region, but I think, as you mentioned, that the intermediaries can have a key role, and they already have capacities, which I think is very important.
Thank you. So in the Basque case, of course, you've got a strong network of science and technology and innovation partners historically that has existed and been embedded institutionally in all the regional innovation strategies, which can help to also coordinate the different actors. Basque Country has a very powerful regional government with strong fiscal powers relative to all other regions in Spain, but also at the subnational level, the three provinces have strong autonomy and fiscal capacity as well. So I guess this comes back to your point about also Edurne, networked governance as well in your conceptual introduction and your conclusions on multi-level governance. Do you have any questions? I think, Stefan, did you just come in?
No, well, maybe because I turned on my camera, probably you got alerted. But yes, I was wondering whether the specific, or what Markus, you said, you emphasized the role of the multi-level system and the regions, the Länder in your case, or whatever you want to call them. So do you think that the specific multi-level governance conditions in Austria are simplifying a transition pathway? Or is it, and therefore would countries without such a multi-level structure that maybe only consists of 2 levels and lacking a strong intermediate level, would they have a worse position for this? Or is it rather disadvantaged because it creates complexity? That's the other way.
Yeah. Well, Stefan, thanks for the question. It's not easy to answer, but it's not I cannot give a very clear answer, because it can be supporting the process, because you have a greater variety of actors, mindsets. You have at the Länder level authorities which are, if they are into the transformative innovation policy paradigm, they learn about the topic of scaling, interregional learning, and they organize at the Länder level specific processes. And this is, I would say, it's an advantage. Yeah. On the other hand, of course, we have different logics and mental models at the state level, and depends on who is involved in the process. Is it from the economic side, or it's more from territorial development? Yeah. So the intervention logic of the different actors are very important to how they, let's say, they impacted the transformation discussion or the transformation process. And there can be a very different, let's say, mental models, yeah? And then it's becoming more complicated. Yeah. But in general, you have partners, you have resources, you have partners for networking, but it's a longer learning process, I guess, to switch to this transformative paradigm at all levels, and to have to synchronize federal, state, and also regional level.
Thank you, Markus. Could you also say something more about the different levels of funding and the relevance of these different levels? Of course, you've mentioned the future national and regional partnership plan as a potential instrument to support this approach, but of course, in terms of scale, cohesion funding is a relatively small share of the overall economic development policy expenditure in your case. So I guess the question is, what are the core funding instruments at the Austrian level, and how do you see this? Could you say something more about the future plans in terms of these national plans? Of course, they're in their infancy and negotiations haven't been finalized, but could you also reflect on the future of EU cohesion policy and whether that can help this paradigm shift?
yeah, well, looking at these 3 levels, and for funding 2 levels, federal and regional, or state level, Länder level. The federal level is clearly, let's say, the relevant one for financing and for providing resources in this topic. So both examples are explained today or mentioned today. There's the funding mainly from the federal level, and the agencies like the Austrian Research Promotion Agency or the Climate and Energy Fund, and they are setting a framework. Then at the state level, you have some instruments for financial support, and it's very often it's quite helpful because sometimes you can address some niches with these instruments and to accelerate activities, and to have some bilaterals and to start activities by this funding at the state level. So let's say it's quite clear that at the federal level the framework is set in particular for the funding issues, but the state level is also relevant. I also mentioned it as a, let's say, networker, bringing people together and having clusters and economic networks and this type of measures. And looking at the National Regional Partnership Plan, well, it's too early to discuss more in detail. It simply started with the discussion in our project. It was we discussed this before the reform papers were on the table, or the draft of the regulations. So we discussed is this paradigm, let's say, implementable in these EU programs, and we see potential, but we also see real restrictions coming from the audit systems and so on. So I guess if you're involved in this EU shared management programs, we all experience that more projects which are, let's say, secure in results and in all the processes are funded than experimentations.
Apologies, you have my Microsoft. Roland, you have raised your hand. Please do comment or ask a question.
Thank you. Roland Abder from Austria, from the federal level. I have a question towards Edurne on this case, the Basque case, and your message that it requires a multi-level strategy. So, so my question goes, if you can give more information how orchestration takes place on this multi-level strategy in your case, in particular, how much on the balance of between the levels, who is somehow setting the pace, so how do how the levels come together, and how the balance of leadership of taking the lead in orchestrating the complementarity then of the regional strategy. Yeah. This was also your message that actually on the regional level, then it's complementing what is coming from the national or the European level. So the question on the orchestration and who are the actors?
Thank you very much. I think it's a very good question. Well, at the regional level in the Basque Country, orchestration mainly comes from the regional government in the forms of committees in which the other levels participate within the region. Then in Spain, well, it's more or less the same. They have like national conferences or committees in which representatives from the different regions, but at policy level, participates. And then, of course, well, in Europe, we have the formal mechanism, but also the Basque, I think Carlos mentioned before, the Basque Science, Technology and Innovation Network is very strong and is very active in European projects. So that's, I think, another way of learning and acquire knowledge as well. In the case of Guipúzcoa, at sub-regional level, orchestration, it's part of the main territorial strategy, and it's something that has been built over not only the last decade more in depth, but also it's at the culture of the sub-region, because the cooperative model of companies. I don't know if you know Mondragon, which is quite new. Quite known. It's also from Guipúzcoa. So I think the values of collaboration are quite strong here, and also the strategy of the government has always been very, very open to collaborate with also local development agencies, but collaborate in the sense not on a top-down perspective, but also then that these intermediaries participate in the decision-making processes, which I think is the difference here. And also, of course, they have formal and informal collaboration mechanisms with the regional government. I have to say that also maybe it's an issue here. I don't know, but the same party is governing the different administrative levels. So I guess that, well, sometimes helps, sometimes maybe not. I don't know in other cases or in the Austrian case, but that's, I think, well,
topic.
Thank you, Edurne. Sasha, did you want to come in?
Yeah, well, thank you. Sasha Ruland from the aforementioned Austrian Research Promotion Agency, and I'm head of what's called the Mission Management Unit. And I maybe wanted to add a few things to what Markus already said, that while we have quite a well-established governance for the missions in Austria, what we don't have is any sort of funding. I mean, there's a national mission on climate neutral cities, which has its own funding for R&D projects, and the ministry in charge has they've also dedicated budgets to enhancing public sector capabilities in order to have people who are responsible for implementing activities in the context of the climate neutral cities. But in the other missions, we don't actually have any mission dedicated budgets whatsoever. I mean, we have a few euros here and there, but we are far from having well, I think the Commission called it mission budgeting. There's no mission budgeting in Austria, and because you mentioned the NRPP as one of the potential sources also for funding, but for defining whatever activities Austria and the Austrian regions are going to implement in the future, and stating that it's rather a limited fund compared to others. I must say, at the moment, basically all hopes from the mission governance in Austria lies with the NRPP to find a way to to go to avoid the R&D only trap, or the and to find actually budgets to implement the activities that are already defined and laid out in these national action plans. Because the federal government doesn't have the money, there's no backing from the European Commission as far as we know. The missions won't be here in the next framework program as far as we know, and Austria has a budget deficit that's not making things easy at the moment. You're mute.
Thank you, Sasha, for clarifying the fiscal constraints, which are a common problem across many different countries. And I think in our EoRPA network, we also have had some countries wanting to learn from other countries on how to do economic development without budgets for economic development at the moment. Michael Johnson from Glasgow.
Yes, hi Carlos, hello everyone. My name's Michael from Glasgow School of Art. I'm a design researcher interested in local and regional transformation in the role design can play in making that more tangible, support collaboration, and really enjoyed the talks today. I found them very encouraging, some of the principles that you were saying we're trying to put in place, but I imagine there's a lot of challenges in that process as well. In one of the collaborations I did with Carlos and the EPRC team, a challenge that came up was how you evidence transformation. So those methods of evidencing what does transformation look like across those different values, for example, including those community collaborators or some of that bottom-up approach and ecological sort of transformation as well. So I just wanted, in your case studies, were you seeing successes or challenges in how you evidence the transformation these policies are trying to promote?
Edurne or Markus?
Well, I mentioned one case study, one region with the renewable energy position, and I would say they really successful in this sort of transformation process. Even they don't would say that they are in a transformation process. They are doing. They see that there is a chance, let's say, a win-win situation for companies, for the region, with the renewable energy issue and wood resources and natural resources. And but they have very are some characteristics which are so important for us in the transformation process. For instance, what I mentioned, they have a surplus in the electricity, and now they use it to encourage the e-mobility sector in the region, and to become a test bed, for e-mobility. So to use this starting point of renewable energy and to move to another field, to another context with the e-mobility, and to build up here new, let's say, also competences. This is quite a good process. But going back, the whole process already, well, it has taken 20 to 25 years now. They started in the 1990s, first projects, then they came up with a vision, energy region. At this time, it was really forefront, to talk about their energy sovereignty. then they build up competences. That's we feel a very, very important issue. They build up competences in the network of their intermediaries and build trust and relations. Yeah, and well, now we have a good landscape of quite innovative projects, a real world laboratory, as a real labor, which is a huge effort for this region, or the size of the region. So we have a clear strategy, a good governance, capacity building, and well, it takes your time, 10, 15, 20 years to really see this type of results. In this case, in a rural region, and on the other side, we have to say this is the topic of energy transition, but they are facing other problems, so demographic shift and so on. So they have another challenges.
Thank you, Markus. Edurne, do you have any reflections on the evidence for transformational change? Maybe also monitoring evaluation frameworks as well.
Well, I think it's a very interesting question, because well, as Michael you mentioned, it's I mean, do we want to measure the outputs, which really I think they take time, as Markus mentioned, or the process, or both? I think we can find signals of transformation in the sense of, well, R&D investments in which areas, in which domains, or wherever. But then if we want, and I think that's the easiest part. I mean, we can measure, participation in innovation projects, or patents, or publications in which domains. Okay, so I think that's very it's easier. But then if we want to measure the process, and well, trust and collaboration and this type of more intangible issues, that's very difficult. And also I think that it depends in which phase we are, because it's easier now if we are more in a well, early phase of a transition to measure, well, yes, R&D collaboration in this type of projects, in innovations, or grassroots innovation, or whatever. Then how are we going to measure well, the changing behaviors, the unlearning that Markus mentioned in his presentation, in the phase-out phases? Okay, so that's it. I think it's a very it's a question for reflections for myself as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you both. We're coming up to the hour. Just one final question I had. Both of the presentations referred to a strong emphasis on experimentation, pilots, living labs. It's a common thing, happens a lot at the EU level as well, especially in Horizon projects. There's an explosion of experimentation and labs in all Horizon projects. But the challenge is, of course, moving from piloting to institutionalization, and again, a watch keyword that came up a lot, scaling up in your presentation. So to what extent, and this is a really challenging question, to what extent and what mechanisms are there to scale up from all of these pilots that are happening, and this emphasis on experimentation at the local level? Is this being done? Can it be done? It's of course a common challenge at the EU level to create companies that can compete across the globe. The absence of unicorns is a common example that's cited. But in both cases, to what extent are you able, and what mechanisms do you have to move from pilots to more mainstreaming of the lessons learned from these pilots? Edurne, do you want to start?
Well, I don't think I can answer to that question, but I maybe I can also comment on the question, because for me it's not only scaling, it's how are we going to, or which are the mechanisms for selecting what it has to be scaled. And I'm going to give you an example which from the Basque Country. We have in the energy transitions, we have two big players, which are international players. One is at the electricity sector, and the other one is oil and gas. They both are really investing in development technologies for energy transition. One in hydrogen, and the other one focus on smart grids and electricity. Which one is the one that is going to be selected and scaled up? So, and I think the mechanism for scaling up has to be a combination of regulations for supra-administrative governments. So, I mean, countries, Europe, and the selection process and really how the international players compete. So it's also a private thing as well.
Thank you, Edurne. Markus, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, so it's one of the important questions there, but no blueprint answer. A few thoughts. I brought in a slide the climate and energy model regions, they are called in Austria. So they are, for instance, it's a sort of scaling program to bring experiences, project results, best good practices into the regions via, let's say, exchange as an exchange platform, and then to bring it into the region and to stimulate new ideas and processes there. It's not completely the scaling what you mean, but it helps in the rollout. And on the other hand, you mentioned the experimentation issue. We see that, let's say, even if you have tested a solution in one region, if you transfer it to another, it's still and again an experimentation for the new region, because it's a different setting, it's a different social setting, and they have to find their own solution again. So you can say again experimenting, or you can say, let's say, rollout of these solutions. We feel that we should redefine the let's say understanding of innovation. That's not always necessary to create a new innovation for the market. It's just for the region, just to find a solution practical for the region. So in all these EU programs, they usually like the innovation new to the market. That it's much more important to become more flexible for new to the region.
Okay, thank you both. So, yeah, I guess your point was, one, you need platforms and networks, such as the climate example, to also to build in a kind of reflexive model that allows regions to also experiment with the pilots in other regions, and also critical is the type of innovation that's being promoted. And Edurne's important point, of course, on the importance of project selection to be able to select the right initiatives, projects, interventions to scale up. We've gone over the hour by 5 minutes, reflecting a really fascinating discussion and presentation. So I'd just like to thank you, Markus and Edurne, for your presentations and answering all the questions. Also, thanks to Julian for the idea behind this webinar, and also to everyone else for your interest in participating and attending. Please do contact us and register for our mailing list for future events, and we hope to see you again soon. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Bye-bye.